All right, brother. So for those who may not know you yet, can you introduce yourself, where you're from, what you represent, and what the name Jay Nixon stands for?
So it's Jay Nickson from California. What the fuck going on outside? Right when we hit record, all the damn sirens start. That's crazy. My bad. Jay Nickson from San Bernardino, California. Uh, what I represent, shit. I mean, art, creativity, prosperity, blackness. Uh, you know, um, where Jay Nixon originates from. That's just my initials. I mean, originally it was just when I started making music, I wanted to come up with a cool name. Originally, I was like Johnny Boy or something like that. Uh, and then I just ended up going with my name. That's the most powerful thing you have to yourself. I think there's this The Wired. Marlo has a scene where he's like, my name is my name. That's like the most valuable and precious thing. So Jay Nixon, that's my name. My first name Jonathan, last name Nixon.
Indeed. Now,
Yeah.
you grew up in California, but you've also lived in Tulsa for a while.
hmm
What were the biggest cultural or lifestyle differences that you noticed between the two places?
Uh, I mean, it's entirely different ecosystems, of course. California, obviously, very hustle culture, very a much more bougie or flashy place, I guess you could say. I've never come from like I guess, high up lifestyle. I've always considered myself middle class at highest. Uh, so it's California is a very diverse place. You grow up around a lot of different cultures and backgrounds, and Tulsa is kind of like is kind of slowly turning into that. It was something I was worried at first. Moving to Tulsa was, if I was going to be in Oklahoma with, surrounded by, like I was living in a sundown town or something. But
Mhm.
I didn't really know the historical significance of Tulsa prior to going out there and really knowing, like, yeah, no, not only did our people, set a foothold and establish there, but they thrived. They created a
Mhm.
lot of their own businesses out there. And that was something that was really, really interesting to know, so yeah.
All right, when you look back at your childhood, what kind of environment did you grow up in?
Um,
You had both parents?
I did have both parents around. My parents split relatively close to my parents split when I was relatively young. So I had both of them in my life, but mainly I live with my mom. I'd visit my dad on weekends, or if I had like school breaks or stuff like that. But my dad wasn't out of the picture or nothing like that. So that was something I'm the most grateful for. But yeah, I had a lot of family around me. Even growing up with my mom, I had a lot of father figures around. I had uncles, I had older cousins and stuff like that. So that was always I had a great village. I'll say that.
Yeah. When you were younger, what did you picture yourself being before music? You know what I'm saying? And creativity came into play. What did you want to be?
Originally, it was an actor. I was always doing plays and stuff at church, at school. I always had dreams of being like a child actor. That was always something I was really into. Uh, music was always there too, though. Throughout my youth, I played a ton of instruments when I was in elementary school. I played like saxophone, clarinet, drums. I started getting into music production on like Garage Band and all that kind of stuff throughout middle school. So I I've always kind of been in a creative mindset, I guess you could say. Music, just actually putting my voice on a track, didn't really come around until like 2021.
Who were some of your biggest influences? I mean, or just people that you looked up to?
Definitely my dad is probably the first one. My dad has always been a go-getter. Always made sacrifices for me, always really stressed how important the actions you take today can affect who you become tomorrow. And he always kind of instilled that in me. And outside influences, I guess you could say, I mean, I was always influenced by people that created music. Was a big one. Unfortunately, it sucks to say, P Diddy was a major influence to me growing up. I mean, being an entrepreneur, music mogul, and all that. Obviously, in hindsight, we know what was coming off the tail end of that. But yeah, I guess you could say that was somebody who definitely influenced me. Mhm.
Give me some artists you used to listen to as far as coming up.
Say again.
Give me some artists that you would listen to coming up that probably influenced your style.
Michael Jackson was definitely a big artist. My grandmothers both put me on the mic very young, so I was into that. Kanye West was another one. Coming up in '07, I remember my dad had the graduation CD. Back
Yeah.
then, you had CDs in your car, you just replay them over and over. So I was spinning graduation over and over. Uh, Justin Timberlake was another one. Shoot, I'm not afraid to admit that. Future Sex Love Sounds album, one of my goats. And I was just all kinds of music. I watched wrestling a lot as a kid too, so that kind of introduced me to like even rock music and things like that I wouldn't have normally considered prior.
Right. So, what were some of the toughest struggles that you had to overcome as a young man, and what did it teach you about yourself?
Self-esteem, I guess, is the biggest thing. I think to this day I still kind of navigate. Still try to navigate, having confidence and really being comfortable taking up space in the room. I guess I was always a bigger kid growing up too, so I was a bigger kid, but kind of soft at heart. So I think I always kind of compensated and tried not to come off intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was definitely a challenge growing up. I don't want to say without my dad, but now without my dad in the household was difficult because I always wanted to have my father around, and that was always something that for one reason or another just never came to fruition. Mhm.
All right. So, like, California is known for having a certain style of culture. How did the environment shape your mindset and creativity?
Um, it was kind of something that I tried to stay away from. My one of the things I'm most grateful for. My mom kept me out of the streets. I wasn't really into gang culture, street culture, none of that. I was relatively sheltered, to be honest. The biggest thing I guess I've adapted from California is like the hustle lifestyle. Everybody here, they say you can make it in California, you can make it anywhere, and that is something I truly believe. And that's kind of shaped who I am. I can make it anywhere. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you survived in the town. What originally brought you to Tulsa? What I mean? What was your first impression when you got down here?
Originally, so my stepmom, her family majority of their life lived in Tulsa. So after my little brother was born, that was just like 2012, 2013. That's
Mm-hmm.
when they decided to move out for them to be closer to my stepmom's family. I still stayed in California for most of that time, but after I graduated in 2017, that's when I decided to go out there and kind of spread my wings and be in a different ecosystem, kind of see what opportunities came of that, and that's what brought me out there. Mhm.
Would you say, or how would you say Tulsa influenced you differently than California, both as a man and as an artist?
I think Tulsa's really where I got my first footing as an adult. I mean, I moved out of Tulsa. I moved to Tulsa like maybe a month after I graduated high school. So that's where I had my first job. My first my first time stepping on a comedy stage. That's where I made my first real, I guess you could say, lifelong friends. Um, and it's kind of where I learned to navigate the world, not on my own, but for myself, and make decisions. And I got to really choose who I kept around. I got my first job. I went to school, so that's where I got my footing as an adult and kind of first started learning how to maneuver maneuvers through the world as a man.
Were there any certain moments, relationships, or experiences in Tulsa that you feel left a permanent mark on you?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, doing comedy, you met a lot. I met a lot of folks that I'm still cool with today. I still talk to today. Uh, my, at work, that's how we connected through our job, and a lot of coworkers. I've met lifelong friends out there, and it's much more different than California, strictly on the basis of, I guess you could say, people are much more hospitable in Tulsa, so it's easier to make friends, to connect, and things like that. So that's that's somewhere I guess I thrived. Mhm.
What was your take on the music and creative scene in Tulsa compared to what you had been around in California?
It was definitely different. Definitely different. Obviously, Tulsa is different. I think California now kind of has a more, I guess you could say, melting pot of different styles and stuff, but it
Mhm.
definitely hasn't always been like that. The West Coast had their very unique sound.
Mhm.
Um, Tulsa, I'm gonna be honest, when I was out there, I wasn't really into the music scene, but
Mhm.
most of what I saw when I did get involved in that was very, the same way, kind of like a different mix of styles. I'm not really familiar with a lot of artists that come out of Tulsa. I mean, I know a few, but that aside from the ones I know,
Yeah,
uh, it's people seem to have, I've seen folks they make songs proud of where they come from, and I think that's important no matter where you are. Mhm.
yeah. Of course, and then that street scene wasn't your scene, so I get it. You know what I mean? That's why you don't know a lot of the artists down here, but it is a bunch of mixed styles down here. You can hear some West Coast artists, you can hear some Texas sounding. You know what I mean? You hear some cats that got their Chicago drill. You know what I mean?
Definitely, definitely.
You can hear the mixture and the sounds here. But while we talking about music, I want to ask you, how did Stay Soul Mafia come together, and what was the original vision behind the group?
Stay Soul Mafia, that was actually put together long before me. I was quite young, actually. I was still in high school when I first got introduced. Actually, my cousin, Miyokio, she's an artist out here. She introduced me to the leader of Stay Soul Mafia, Jason Law, as I was maybe like 15 or 16 when I first met Jason. I mean, the first time we ever linked, I mean, I think we hung out maybe like 8, 9 hours to like 4 or 5 in the morning. He was showing me his discography or collection of tracks and production, and that was always something I was interested in, from childhood music production, and hearing cool sounds. I could listen to the same song all day and never get tired of it. So being able to be in a space where uh, I could see that be created, and the music that he was creating was awesome. It was really, really cool to be able to experience that. So that's where I first, I guess, was introduced to Say Soul Mafia. Me joining didn't happen until 2020, around 2020, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of when I first I had made a freestyle that I put on IG, and from there, the rest is history. I joined in. I think the first day I linked up with everybody and met in the group. We did the photo shoot for our first collective album, and then that night we made, like, maybe that's when I first did my first song. I think it was called "Gone for a Minute." That's on our first LP, and then the rest is history.
When did you first start doing music? As far as like, not really take. Well, when did you first start? Yeah, man, yeah. Go ahead.
First started making my own music around this same time, around like 2021. That's when I started, writing, putting stuff on wax. Before then, I was just kind of freestyling. I'd make a rap to like a beat if I was really feeling it or something like that. I was really into like battle rap back then. In high school, I used to do battle raps with a lot of the local artists out here. So, like I said, music has always been a big influence in my life, but that was when I first started putting my voice to wax. Was 2021. Hmm.
All right. So every group has its highs and lows. What were some of the best moments you had with Stay Soul Mafia, and what were some of the challenges?
Some of our best moments, I would say, were just the studio sessions when we got together and we really created. I mean, it was unlike anything I ever been a part of. Like I'll never forget the first time I recorded with them, and just seeing how everybody. It was really, we were like a family in there. I want to say the first studio session we did, we must have walked in there with like 4 or 5 tracks, like completely finished, and they were not like quickly thrown together tracks either, like really thoughtful and artistic stuff. So those were definitely the highs. Our performances too were always fun. Anytime getting to do a show or share the stage with them, it was always something I really enjoyed. I guess the challenges or low parts with us having so many members is kind of getting us all together in one spot could be tricky. People have they have their own lives, whether it be work or kids or whatever. They have other responsibilities,
Right.
and so that could have, that kind of did make getting everybody together difficult from time to time. Yeah.
Do you see yourself working solo more, or do you see yourself working more as a solo artist moving forward, or do you see yourself building with others?
Um, a little of both. I'm still learning who I am as a person. I'm growing every day and kind of learning how to navigate this challenging world. And that's only something you can really do by yourself. And something too, I'm always down to collab with other artists and learn from other artists. So that's always something I think too that'll just be a part of who I am. I'm sometimes you need somebody around to put that battery in your back, or to see what the next man is doing, not necessarily for the sake of comparison, but just to kind of uh they say iron sharpens iron, so that's always something that I'll value.
Excuse me. So, my bad.
No worries.
Outside of music, what are you working on or focusing your energy on right now?
um Really myself. I mean, started going to therapy and kind of navigating a lot of emotional crutches I've had for a while. um, Getting back into entertainment, being an organizer in my community, speaking up for civil rights with things that are going on. That's always something I'll continue to do. Being there for my family is also something that's very important to me, and will always be. So, things like that.
That right there, I just was speaking for civil rights. Is that something that like sparked you recently, or is that something that's always been inside of you? Or like, was it something like an event that took place, or when did you start? Getting involved in that area?
To be honest, it was always something it was something I wasn't really into growing up. Like I hated history. I hated learning about a bunch of people that were dead, and I always saw it as pointless as a kid. Obviously now, with the current climate and things, it's become something that's very important to me, and it's something I kind of shoot myself or bang myself in the head over, because I've always had people around me that spoke about civil rights and things like that. And I guess it wasn't really until you see things from 20 around like 2015, or even before that, with like police brutality and things like that starting to be caught on camera. It's stuff that you can't look away from, and it's getting to a point where, like, now with the rise of social media, you see who your enemies are. I didn't really. I lived in this kind of naive world where I was like, people. Not everybody wants to harm you and do all that, but it's like now you kind of see. It's like, no, there's people out here that are uh, proudly saying that they support harm on people that look like me, and I'd be a fool to not take a stand and be on the right side of history with that, and take a stand. And obviously I have I don't have any children, but I have, little siblings that are growing up in this world. And if I one day want to bring life into this world, it's like I can't not fight for those things.
Mm-hmm. And see, even deeper than civil rights, but I've been digging into human rights.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna just drop two articles on here: the Declaration of Human Rights and the Declaration of Rights of a Child. You know what I'm saying? Those are too important that our people should read into.
Absolutely.
It's like maybe 14 articles, but it's like maybe 5 pages
Mhm.
if you get the book.
Yeah.
Uh, Going back to okay, so how do you balance your grind of chasing creative goals with the realities of life, family, and responsibilities?
Um, I think you let them guide the other. You let one guide the other. Art is a reflection of life. And so as I continue to kind of have more experiences as a man and continue to go through hurdles and obstacles, I feel like that will reflect in my art. And um yeah, there's not really much more I can add to that. It'll just constantly be a reflection of where I am mentally,
Mhm.
spiritually, uh, and I'll always want it to be that.
Tell me some things to keep you motivated when things don't go as planned.
My family is probably my biggest motivator. Making people around me proud, um, and that's that's really it. And just being 1% better every day. It's like I want to be able to look back at who I am now in 20 years and say, you know, although I didn't maybe have all the right answers or have all the right, you know, um, ways of going about doing things, I can still stand on my morals and standards and say, I'm still, representing those same values.
Hmm. Hmm. When you think about success today, what does it actually look like to you beyond the typical money and fame?
Mental prosperity, man. I mean, you don't really realize how much your things like your childhood really plague you as an adult, as much as you try to um as
Forget
much as
about
people try
certain things.
to say again.
I was gonna say forget about certain things.
Yeah, as much as people try to like refute it, it's like no, it really does. uh it does take a toll on you. As know how you're raised is, that bleeds into how you interact with your partner, or that bleeds into how you interact with coworkers, or how you go about business relationships. I forgot who it was. It was like uh I, I, I f- I saw an interview. I forgot who it was, but it was this I think it was a producer or a musician or something like that. But he was pretty much saying like, he says if you're somebody that cheats on your wife, uh, he can't do business with you, because if the person you lay with can't trust you, how could he? And that is kind of a reflection of that. Like who you are, it's gonna show in whatever you do. So making sure you have, like I said, a strong moral compass, backbone, and also just physical health too is something I've kind of battled with throughout my life. But getting back into being physically healthy and making sure that I'm here for however long to fight and represent the things I believe in is important as well.
Yeah, man, because health is that's been on my mind real tough. I ain't even finna get into that. But you hit that right on the nose, and I'm glad you said it because I feel like that was directed. You know what I'm saying? That was I took notes on that one.
Yeah.
But if you could speak directly to the youth, especially the young men trying to find their way in today's times, what message would you want to get them?
That lack of empathy is not a flex. Uh, Turning your back on, you know, a lot of folks, they get their bag, they get their piece of the pie, and they want to look down or try to ignore folks that are not in their situation, that are in worse situations than them. And to those people, I would say, if it's them today, it's you tomorrow. And I would say, just continue to fight for the recognize your privilege, whether it be financial privilege or you know, geographical privilege, you know, based on wherever you may stay, if you're out of the way of certain things, but just continue to speak up for those that can't speak up for themselves.
Indeed. When people look back at Jay Nickson years from now, what do you want to be remembered for? Not just as an artist, but as a man.
uh I would say just somebody who was honest. You know, I'm not perfect. I've made a ton of mistakes in my life, and I wear those, you know, on my sleeve. I wear lessons, and I want to be remembered just for somebody who tried. You know, woke up every day trying to be 1% better, trying to speak up for those who couldn't speak up for themselves, trying to bring art and light and bring laughs into the world. That's always something I wanted to do. Putting a smile on people's faces is always something I've loved doing, and you know I want to be remembered for that.
Indeed. I respect that. That's what I'm on now.
Yeah,
Trying to help change, trying to help, you know what I mean, change the if I could create younger the stuff that I did, you know what I'm saying, I just want to get the youth now a better option.
yeah,
It'd be hard to explain it, but if to the people, if we can create the little homies, you know what I'm saying, the YGs, whatever young YNs, whatever we call them,
yeah,
then we can create the next architect, the next
hmm,
mathematician, the next scientist, the next builder. You know what I'm saying? We can create the
yeah,
next. It ain't always got to be about sports or music,
correct.
but you know what I mean. Like we can create those same greatness. But my last question I want to ask you is, where can people follow your journey, tap in with your music, and support you?
Um, I have a. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sitting on a lot of unreleased music. I only have one song that's currently released aside from the Stay Soul Mafia LPs. My group has two different released LPs, which you can find on all digital streaming platforms under Jason Law. That's YouTube, Spotify, Apple. You can find me on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube at J. Period Nickson, on IG at the J Nickson, TheJNickson, or at TikTok, which is my most followed platform right now, and my TikTok is Johnny Boy, JONNYBOOOI.